Namaste, hello and welcome. My name is Solar Bodhidharma and this is Tantric Thoughts. In the winter of 2001, something really profound happened to me, something that changed the course of my life forever. I was attacked and I went into a prolonged state of clinic death. When I arose from the coma a week later, something really remarkable happened as a new insight, a new understanding into the mechanics of the universe starts to glimmer and whisper in my heart. I spent the rest of my adult life trying to make sense and integrate that insight, and this series is about sharing those insights with you. As I was born in Israel, my journey started with Kabbalah. But soon after, it expanded into shamanism, medicine plants. I started study and practice Taoism. And then in some point, I was introduced also to Buddhism and the vast philosophies of India. I was initiated into a Tantric lineage, studied scriptures, did more classical practice, and I also dived into a lot of the more New Age practices that are more focused on psychology, self-development, and growing up. As I continued to dedicate my life to meditation retreats and practice, traveling the world, meeting teachers, and trying to connect with communities of practitioners, I experienced, again, there's not a word, but like profound insights, things that made my heart rejoice and just so much grace being in the presence of Thee. While in the same time, there was a certain level of discontentment. In all these great philosophies and spiritual practices that touched on the beyond in a way which is so exquisite, there was always some things missing. There was always something that they didn't see, that they didn't catch right. And it seems that all of those different philosophies and practices were somehow stuck in a literal mythic stage of development. They were all very dogmatic. And they were all very reductionistic. They always tried to fit everything in the universe into their own box, into their own limited perspective. They were right, they held the absolute truth, and everybody else was wrong. So I couldn't really find myself in any of those. Nothing was truly satisfying. And just doing my own thing by myself was also not really fulfilling, as I had the need for community, for teacher, to share the journey. And this is where Integral Tantra and this series of Tantric Thoughts are really coming into play. Through my journey, I had the blessing to experience the presence of the divine and to be in a space full of grace. I received profound insights, and I've waited many years for them to mature, so I will be able to consolidate and verbalize them in a way that will be coherent and I could communicate them. I feel that this journey is coming to a level of fruition, and now I am ready to share those things with you. So I want to invite you to a journey of co-creating a new reality of an integral approach to Tantra, bringing Tantra into the integral age. And I will be sharing with you all of my insights and give you practices that will really take your life into the next level. It is possible that you are already practicing classical Tantra or any other kind of traditional spirituality, and you have experienced the beauty, the grace, the blessing, the insights that comes from those teachings. But in the same time, you might also realize that something in those teachings is very limited, it's reductionistic, it's a little bit dogmatic and not very inclusive, and you want it more. It's also possible that you practice more New Age spirituality and New Age Tantra, and you really enjoy this pluralistic, all-inclusive embrace that you find in those kind of practices. But you also felt that a little bit more structure could be beneficial, that a little bit more coherency about what is New Age Tantra, what are the practices, what do we agree upon, and where does the practice supposed to take us, could help. Or maybe you don't even see yourself as a spiritual practitioner, and you'd have no background in Tantra. But this notion of integral spirituality, an integral spiritual approach for the 21st century is something that you feel inspired by. You feel the tremors in your heart and you feel the call to be a part of this journey. If any of those resonates with you, please stay tuned. Now, it will be important to acknowledge that everything that I'm sharing with you is highly subjective. My own experience is always being interpreted by my own level of development. So the states of consciousness, my way of observing other practitioners and seeing where do what practices leads or what are the effect of whatever philosophies we're going to be discussing, are always being looked at or perceived from the lens which is my own stage of development. So with this, what I'm trying to say is that this is not going to be a one-man show. Although I'm sitting here looking at you or talking to you through a video, I really want to invite you to participate. I want to invite you to ask questions and also doubt and try to see if what I'm saying actually makes sense to you. We are going to be looking together at the historical development of the Tantric tradition and the non-dual vision. And we're gonna give certain critiques. We're gonna see where does it work and where does it fall short. And in the same way, we want to keep the level of discussion open to doubt, open to questioning. And we can see that this is very much already starting to embrace the notions of integral spirituality. And also it goes very much along with the spirit of the Tantric tradition. One of the things that makes this tradition so unique, or one of the personalities, the great gurus of this tradition that really took it above and beyond, is Abhinavagupta, that lived around the 9th century of the Common Era. One of the things that he did that allowed in the tradition for such a unique development is that he went and practiced and studied all the other philosophies that were available at the time, and then pass critique and evaluation on those practices and where do they lead. Even more than that, he criticized and changed very basic notions that were in other tantric philosophies that were present at the time, both in the Shiva Siddhanta and both in the Trika schools, and changed the way that they view the cosmos, change and help to develop the way that they understand consciousness and energy. And the beauty of it is that he did that in a notion that goes along with the integral vision. So it's not to say that Abhinavagupta or classical Tantra was an integral practice or anything like this whatsoever, but he already had a notion of the tenets of transcend and include. So he didn't came and say, everything that was before me, they are all wrong, and now I am telling you the truth and that's how it is. Rather, he transcend and include. He built on top of everything that was already existing and said, those practices might be true. They might be necessary, however, they are not sufficient. Those are truth, but they are relative truth. They are partial truth, and they will not bring to the full liberation. Now, I'm going to expand on them. I'm going to take the philosophy and the practice a few steps farther. We're going to change a few things, and we're going to have a more complete knowledge, a more correct knowledge that will bring to a deeper and fuller realization. So this is very much what we are endeavoring to do here on this journey. We are trying to draw on the tradition. We acknowledge that we are standing on the shoulders of giants. We pay respect and reverence to all the gurus and the wisdom traditions that came before. But we also want to acknowledge that they came from a stage of development of humanity that was very literal mythic. And they had a very tough time integrating into the modern and even more to the postmodern world. And now we are trying to help them to mature, to transform all the way into an integral stage of development. In the next videos, we're gonna zoom in and really break down what are the main tenets, the main pillars, what are the foundations that make a practice truly integral, and what integral Tantra can look like. But before we conclude, I just wanna touch briefly on 4 of the main elements that will guide us through our journey. The first thing is that the philosophy or the view of the world that we are working with is the supreme non-dual vision. It is to say that we are looking at the world from a more monistic vision, which means that both consciousness and energy are being seen as the attributes of the same oneness, of the same thing. So there is no more this dichotomy of what is primary, whether consciousness or energy. They are both emerging in the same time and are expressions of the same thing. The second guiding principle is that our philosophy is evolutionary. That's to say that it's not cyclical or deterministic. It recognizes the evolutionary impulse in creation as an expression of the divine and as a need, as an impulse of the divine to create and to express itself. And as well, we are acknowledging that the spiritual understanding and depth that we experience and will continue to experience is continuously evolving. There is a feedback mechanism in which consciousness is experiencing itself through the multiplicity, and that feedback mechanism go back into spirit and transform the whole universe. This is maybe one of the most radical ideas that we include into Integral Tantra, as it is not acknowledged in that way in the classical view of Kashmir Shaivism. But more on that in a different video. The third tenet that is gonna help us to guide this journey is that we're gonna try as much as possible to look at our practice, philosophy and discussion and our life in general through the integral meta theory. The integral meta theory, as I'm going to be talking about it, was developed by Ken Wilber and could be summarized into an acronym which is called AQUAL. AQUAL stands for all levels, all lines, all states, all types, and the 4 quadrants. Again, we're going to go into each one of those more in particular in a later video. But basically, we are calling this practice an integral practice. First, because we are trying to bring Tantra into an integral stage of development, and we are using the integral meta theory to guide us through the journey. The fourth tenet or pillar that is going to help us to guide our journey are the 4 principles of any integral spiritual practice. And those are waking up, cleaning up, growing up, and showing up. For waking up, we want to do practices and engage with a philosophy that help us to remember, help us to reconnect and recognize the core of our being and awaken into our true nature. For cleaning up, we want to engage in more psychological practices that helps us to recognize and integrate our shadows, clear the subconscious, and live from a more connected place. For growing up, we want to engage in things that help us to widen our perspective, to mature to a more embracive, more inclusive level of development. And finally, all this will not mean much if we cannot show up, if we cannot bring all this in an embodiment state and connect and bring it back into the community and the people around us. In many ways, this is the test in the end of the day, the yardstick to see if your practice and spirituality is valid at all. Alright, so with that we're going to conclude for today. I know we mentioned a lot of big words that each one of them needs a video by itself just to take the time, break it down, and truly understand what stands behind it. And we will do that together. And I hope that you feel inspired by now to come on this journey and co-create together this new vision of Integral Tantra, a truly holistic approach for spirituality in the 21st century.